Welcome back to the channel, where we break down the most powerful ideas in personal development, leadership, and long-term success, one chapter at a time. Today, we begin one of the most influential books in self-mastery and personal growth, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. In this first episode, we're diving deep into Habit 1, Be Proactive, a concept that's easy to understand but life-changing when practiced consistently. This isn't just about taking initiative, it's about realizing that you are the author of your life, not a victim of your circumstances. By the end of this video, you'll understand the difference between reactive and proactive people, how to shift your mindset and your language, and how to begin reclaiming control over your time, energy, and future. Let's get started. Stephen Covey begins with a radical idea that real change doesn't begin with your job, your boss, your relationships, or your finances. It begins with you. Habit 1 is all about taking full responsibility for your life. This is the foundation of everything else in the book. Without it, no other habit works. With it, everything begins to shift. So what does it mean to be proactive? It means recognizing that your behavior is a product of your decisions, not your conditions. It means you are not your past. You are not your feelings. You are not your circumstances. You are the one who can observe your thoughts, feel your emotions, and still choose your response. Covey famously writes, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." This one insight separates us from animals. It's what makes us human, the ability to pause, reflect, and respond based on values, not impulses. Covey introduces two powerful concepts, the circle of concern and the circle of influence. The circle of concern includes all the things you care about, your health, the economy, politics, other people's behavior, the weather. Some of these things are important, but you can't control them. The circle of influence, on the other hand, includes what you can actually do something about, your own thoughts, your attitude, your actions, your habits. Reactive people focus on their circle of concern. They waste energy complaining, blaming, and worrying about things they can't control. As a result, they feel more powerless, and their influence shrinks. Proactive people focus on their circle of influence. They take responsibility for what they can control. And over time, their influence grows. This framework is a game changer. It puts your attention back where it matters, on your own ability to act. To illustrate this, Covey tells the story of Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps. Frankl was stripped of everything, his clothes, his freedom, his family. Yet he discovered that no one could take away his inner power, the freedom to choose his attitude. That insight became the foundation of his life's work, and a cornerstone of Covey's habit model. Covey argues that you and I have the same freedom. No matter the circumstance, we can choose our response. That's what it means to be proactive. He also warns us about the power of language. Your words reveal your mindset. Reactive people use powerless language. I can't. That's just the way I am. He made me mad. There's nothing I can do. Proactive people speak differently. I choose. Let me find a better response. I can work on that. I'll create a solution. Changing your words is one of the fastest ways to change your thinking, and changing your thinking changes your life. But Covey is not just asking us to say new things. He's asking us to take full ownership. And for many, that's uncomfortable. We're conditioned to blame. It's easy to say, if only my boss weren't so difficult, or if only I had more time, or if only I had a better upbringing. But Covey says these if only thoughts are dangerous. They trap us in victim thinking. And as long as you think like a victim, you'll never act like a leader. Being proactive means dropping the excuses. It means saying, it's my move. That doesn't mean life is fair. It doesn't mean everything is in your control. But it does mean that your response is always your responsibility. Covey gives us some practical ways to build this habit. First, start noticing your language. Every time you say, I have to, pause and say, I choose to. Every time you start blaming someone else for your frustration, ask yourself, what is one thing I can do to move forward? Second, spend more time in your circle of influence. Write down everything that's worrying you. Then draw a circle around the things you can control. Focus there and act. Third, build personal integrity. Start keeping small promises to yourself. Wake up when you said you would. Complete the task you committed to. Over time, your sense of control and confidence will grow. Fourth, use affirmations and visualization to reinforce your proactive identity. Not vague or fluffy affirmations, but concrete statements like, I am responsible for my reactions. I choose my values over my feelings. I act with intention and integrity. These statements reprogram your subconscious to respond with ownership, not blame. Covey also reminds us that proactivity creates momentum. When you start taking responsibility, people begin to notice. You earn trust. You get more opportunities. You stop waiting for change and start becoming the change. That's why this habit is foundational. It's not just about attitude. It's about identity. Being proactive isn't something you do once. It's who you decide to be. And once you make that shift, once you stop reacting and start responding, your whole life begins to transform. This is the first step in what Covey calls the private victory. It's the moment you move from dependence to independence, from blaming to owning. Only after this can you move into the habits of leadership, teamwork, and synergy. But first, you must take command of your own mind and actions. So before we close, ask yourself, where in your life are you reacting instead of choosing? What relationships are you blaming instead of owning? What habits could shift if you started responding instead of complaining? Start there. Because habit 1, be proactive, is not about being perfect. It's about being powerful. And your power begins the moment you accept that your response is your responsibility. Let's take a moment to bring it all together. Habit 1, be proactive is not a productivity tip. It's a total shift in how you see yourself and your role in life. It teaches us that we are not victims of our genes, our upbringing, or our environment. We are not passengers in someone else's car, we are the ones holding the wheel. And while we can't always control what happens, we can always control how we respond. This is where self-mastery begins. It's the foundation of emotional intelligence, leadership, and long-term personal growth. And it's a habit that anyone, in any situation, can begin to build. So ask yourself, are you acting or reacting? Are you responding with intention or running on autopilot? Are you focused on what you can control or consumed by what you can't? The truth is, every day presents us with dozens of chances to live proactively. In how we speak, in how we lead, in how we think, and in how we choose to carry ourselves, even when no one's watching. Because the ultimate freedom, as Viktor Frankl taught us, lies in the space between stimulus and response. And in that space, you write your story. If this summary brought clarity or value to your life, make sure to like this video and subscribe. We're covering all 7 habits with full-length, in-depth voiceover scripts right here on the channel. In the next video, we'll dive into habit 2, begin with the end in mind, and learn how to define a personal vision that gives your life direction and meaning. Until then, drop a comment below. What's one situation in your life where you will now? Welcome back to the channel where we decode the world's most powerful personal development books, one chapter at a time. In this video, we explore habit 2 from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey, and this one has the power to completely realign the way you live your life. The habit is called Begin with the End in Mind. This isn't just about goal setting. It's about designing your life with purpose. It's about living by principles, not pressures. It's about knowing where you're going so every action you take brings you closer to the life you were meant to live. Let's get into it. Stephen Covey says that everything is created twice, once in the mind and once in the physical world. Just like an architect draws a blueprint before construction begins, we too must mentally design the lives we want to live before we begin building day by day. This is the core of habit 2. Mental creation precedes physical creation. And if we're not the authors of that mental creation, then we're living by someone else's script. Too many people spend their lives climbing a ladder, only to realize at the end that it was leaning against the wrong wall. This happens when you're busy, even successful, but not fulfilled. Because you never stop to define what success means to you. So how do you avoid this? You start with the end in mind. Covey introduces a powerful visualization. Imagine your own funeral. You walk into the service. You see family, friends, colleagues. And you realize they're here to honor your life. One by one, they step up to speak. What would you want your spouse, your children, your friends, your co-workers to say about the kind of person you were? What kind of parent were you? What kind of friend, professional, community member? This exercise, while emotional, forces clarity. Because in that moment, you're not focused on awards or money. You're thinking about values, integrity, service, kindness, courage. This is the kind of clarity that should guide your life every day, not just at the end. Covey then introduces one of the most practical tools for building this clarity, the personal mission statement. Just as a business has a mission statement to guide its strategy, a personal mission statement defines who you are and what you're about. It answers questions like, what do I value most? What is my unique contribution? What legacy do I want to leave behind? A good personal mission statement is based on principles, not feelings. Long-term and enduring. Not focused on outcomes, but on identity. It might sound something like this. To live with courage and compassion. To lead my family with love, my team with integrity, and my life with purpose. To seek growth daily, serve others generously, and die empty. It can be simple or poetic, but it must be honest. And once you have that statement, you gain a decision-making compass. You can align your daily tasks and long-term goals with the deeper why of your life. But Covey warns that not everyone lives by a principle-centered mission. Many people live centered around unstable references, like money, relationships, work, or even enemies. Let's look at a few examples. Someone who is spouse-centered defines their life by their partner's moods or opinions. If the relationship is good, they're good. If it's struggling, their identity crumbles. A money-centered person may seem successful, but their happiness is tied to financial status. When money flows, they feel confident. When it's tight, they feel powerless. A work-centered person may perform well professionally, but their self-worth is linked entirely to their career. Retirement, layoffs, or even a sabbatical can leave them emotionally lost. What do these have in common? They're reactive. These people are not living from the inside out. They're defined by their environment, not their principles. This is why Covey advocates for a principle-centered life. Principles like integrity, fairness, kindness, and growth don't change with trends. They provide stability. When your life is built on them, you're able to adapt to change without losing your core. Living with the end in mind means leading yourself, not just managing life. That distinction matters. Here's an example. Let's say you're climbing the corporate ladder. You're working 70 hours a week, constantly pushing for the next promotion. That's management, doing things right. But have you stopped to ask if the ladder is against the right wall? If the work you're doing, and the life you're building, actually aligns with your deepest values? That's leadership, doing the right things. Covey emphasizes that true effectiveness starts with self-leadership. You decide what matters, and then you align your life accordingly. Another powerful concept in this chapter is the idea of roles. We all play multiple roles in life: parent, spouse, friend, team leader, mentor, citizen, etc. Covey encourages you to define your mission within each role. Ask yourself, as a parent, what kind of legacy do I want to leave with my children? As a professional, how do I want to contribute to my organization? As a friend, what kind of presence do I want to offer? When you write out those roles and your purpose within each, your life gains clarity and direction. You're no longer pulled in all directions, because you've defined your own. Let's go deeper with a few real-world examples. A woman named Lisa, overwhelmed by work and parenting, decides to create a mission statement for her role as a mother. She writes, "To raise my children with confidence, respect, and unconditional love. To model emotional resilience and lifelong learning." Now, even when life gets chaotic, Lisa can measure her actions against that statement. It becomes her anchor. Or take David, a mid-level manager feeling unfulfilled. After applying habit 2, he realizes he wants to lead with integrity and help others grow. He rewrites his work habits, begins mentoring junior staff, and finds meaning, not just in deadlines, but in developing people. These aren't just motivational stories. They're examples of how self-leadership, powered by vision, changes your results, your energy, and your relationships. Another concept Covey shares is that of affirmations and visualization. Affirmations, when based on values and integrity, not hype, help reinforce your identity. For example, I am a consistent, kind father. I make decisions based on principles, not popularity. I lead with purpose, not pressure. Pair that with visualization, imagining yourself acting out your mission in real situations, and you rewire your responses. When practiced daily, you don't just wish to be more intentional, you start becoming the person you envisioned. Covey also encourages building your mission statement into your weekly planning process. Before you create your to-do list or schedule meetings, revisit your mission. Let it speak. Ask yourself, does this week reflect my values? For example, if family is part of your mission, but your calendar has zero time set aside for connection, there's a disconnect. If growth is a core value, but there's no space for reading, reflection, or rest, something needs to change. Habit 2 helps bridge the gap between who you want to be and what you do every day. It's not about being rigid or inflexible, it's about being grounded. It's about choosing your response to life, not just reacting to it. And that's what makes this habit so transformative. When you begin with the end in mind, you stop living on autopilot. You take back your sense of agency. You align your time with your values. And you move from being busy to being effective. This isn't a one-time insight, it's a lifelong practice. Let's close with a recap of what we learned from Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. We explored the principle that everything is created twice, first in the mind, then in reality. The power of visualization, especially the funeral exercise, to define legacy and purpose. How a personal mission statement becomes your compass for decision-making. The danger of reactive centers, money, relationships, work, and why principle-centered living provides the most stability. The value of defining your purpose in each role you play, as a partner, parent, friend, professional. The importance of affirmations, visualization, and alignment in reinforcing identity. And how Habit 2 leads to intentional living, where success is not accidental, it's designed. Ultimately, Habit 2 asks, what kind of life are you building? And reminds you, you are the architect. If this video helped you reconnect with your long-term purpose or inspired you to write your own mission statement, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this 7 habit series. Next up is Habit 3, Put first things first, where we'll take everything we've defined in Habit 2 and learn how to live it through time management, prioritization, and disciplined execution. Drop a comment below and let me know. What's one value or vision that you want to make central in your life? Or, if you've written a mission statement, what part of it guides you most? Thanks for watching. Remember, don't just live by default. Live by design. Because the most effective life is the one that begins with the end in mind. Welcome back to the channel where we bring you full-length breakdowns of the most transformational books ever written, one life-changing habit at a time. Today we're diving into Habit 3, Put First Things First from Stephen R. Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If Habit 1 was about taking control of your life, and Habit 2 was about defining your direction and purpose, then Habit 3 is where the rubber meets the road. This habit is about execution, about aligning your day-to-day actions with your deepest values. It's not just time management, it's self-management. By the end of this video, you'll learn the difference between urgency and importance, the time quadrant model that can change your productivity, how to plan your week in alignment with your mission, and how to stop letting distractions control your life. Let's jump in. Stephen Covey begins by reminding us of what we've already learned. Habit 1, be proactive. You are in charge of your life. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Define your mission, your values, your destination. But now comes the challenge. How do you live your values every day, when life is full of distractions, demands, and deadlines? This is where Habit 3 comes in. The key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. Covey says that effective people don't just react to urgent things, they act on important things. And that brings us to one of the most powerful tools in the book, the time management matrix. This matrix has 4 quadrants, based on 2 criteria. Urgent versus not urgent. Important versus not important. Let's break them down. Quadrant I, urgent and important. These are crises, pressing problems, deadline-driven projects. You can't avoid Quadrant I, it's where real emergencies live. But if you spend all your time here, you'll burn out. You'll constantly be putting out fires, reacting instead of leading. Quadrant 3, urgent but not important. This is the danger zone. It feels like you're being productive, but you're not. These are interruptions, phone calls, unimportant meetings, emails that feel pressing but add no value. Reactive people live in Quadrant 3. Their day is filled with responding to others' priorities, not their own. Quadrant 4, not urgent and not important. This is time wasting, scrolling endlessly, binge watching, gossip, busy work. There's no value here. A little Quadrant 4 is fine for rest, but too much, and you lose focus, discipline, and momentum. Quadrant 2, not urgent but important. This is where great lives are built. Quadrant 2 includes planning, relationship building, preventative health, learning and growth, mission and goal setting, creative thinking, deep work. These things don't scream for attention, but they're the most impactful. Covey says the more time you invest in Quadrant 2, the less time you'll spend in crisis mode, Quadrant I, and the less control others will have over your schedule, Quadrant 3. So the key to Habit 3 is this. Live in Quadrant 2. Make space for what matters most before it becomes urgent or lost. To do this, Covey offers a simple but powerful weekly planning method based on your roles and goals. Start by identifying your key roles. Parent, partner, team leader, community volunteer, student, entrepreneur. Then for each role, ask, what is the most important thing I can do in this role this week? These are Quadrant 2 actions. They're not urgent, but they move the needle. For example, As a parent, have a one-on-one conversation with my teenage daughter. As a team leader, create space for the team to reflect on last quarter's lessons. As a student, schedule 90 minutes to outline my research paper. Once you've identified these key actions, schedule them first. Protect time for them. Then let everything else fill in the rest of your calendar. This is values-based planning. It's not about squeezing more in, it's about doing what matters. Covey also introduces the concept of stewardship delegation, a deeper, more empowering way to delegate. Rather than micromanaging tasks, you delegate results and give people the tools, trust, and accountability to get them done. This applies to leading teams, raising kids, or managing partnerships. It builds trust and responsibility, not dependency. He also distinguishes between urgency addiction and principle-centered discipline. Urgency addiction is when you get a rush from fighting fires. You wait until the last minute, then power through. It feels productive, but it's reactive. And it comes at the expense of quality, creativity, and health. Covey warns that many high performers are urgency addicts. And they burn out because they never build the margin needed for long-term effectiveness. Let's now look at some real-life applications of Habit 3. In business, a leader who prioritizes Quadrant 2 will spend time building systems, developing people, and casting vision, not just solving problems. In family life, a couple who schedules regular check-ins before conflict arises is practicing Habit 3. They're acting preventatively, not reactively. In personal health, exercising, meditating, or eating well isn't urgent until disease shows up. Then it becomes Quadrant I. Habit 3 is the discipline to say, I will act now on what matters later. It's the decision to build before there's a breakdown, to connect before there's a conflict, to grow before you're forced to adapt. But what holds people back from practicing Habit 3? Covey points out a few common barriers. Lack of clarity. If you haven't done the work of Habit 2, creating a mission, you won't know what's truly important. Fear of saying no. Many people stay in Quadrant 3 because they don't want to disappoint others. But every yes to something not important is a no to what matters. Addiction to urgency. The dopamine hit of a last-minute sprint can feel satisfying. But it steals attention from deeper, slower, more meaningful work. Perfectionism. Some avoid Quadrant 2 because they think they need a perfect plan. But effectiveness grows from starting, not from being flawless. Covey suggests practical ways to overcome these traps. Begin weekly planning every Sunday. Schedule time for quiet reflection. Protect small blocks of uninterrupted time. Learn to say, let me get back to you, instead of impulsively agreeing. And always ask, is this important? Or just urgent? Habit 3 is about building a life of intention, 1 week at a time. Let's wrap up this chapter with a focused recap. Habit 3, put first things first, is the execution habit. It's about living out your mission with discipline. We covered Covey's time management matrix and the 4 quadrants. Why Quadrant 2 is where proactive, values-driven people live. How to plan your week by roles and goals, not tasks and pressure. The power of delegation, clarity, and prevention. Real-world applications in business, relationships, and personal development. And how to break free from urgency addiction by committing to long-term priorities. Habit 3 teaches us that life doesn't respond to your intentions, it responds to your calendar. If it's not scheduled, it doesn't happen. So don't just react. Don't just get through the week. Design it. If this chapter helped you reframe how you manage your time and energy, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. We're going through the 7 habits of highly effective people, 1 chapter at a time, fully expanded, fully actionable. Next up is Habit 4, Think Win-Win, where we move from personal victory to interdependence, learning how to build relationships based on trust, abundance, and mutual benefit. Drop a comment below and share. Which quadrant are you spending most of your time in? And what's one quadrant 2 activity you're going to schedule this week? Thanks for watching. Remember, you can't manage time. You can only manage yourself. And effectiveness means putting first things first. Welcome back to the channel where we explore the world's most powerful personal development books, chapter by chapter, and transform those insights into strategies you can apply today. In this episode, we're diving into Habit 4, Think Win-Win from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. If the first 3 habits helped you master independence, taking control of your mindset, mission, and time, Habit 4 is where the journey into interdependence begins. It's about how you relate to others. Whether in business, parenting, partnerships, or community life, the win-win mindset is the foundation of lasting, effective relationships. By the end of this video, you'll understand what a win-win paradigm truly means, why many people operate from a scarcity mindset without realizing it, how to build character and systems that support mutual success, and how to start shifting your conversations from competition to collaboration. Let's get started. Covey opens this chapter with a profound truth. The world you see is shaped by the mindset you carry. Most people approach interactions, especially in business or conflict, with one of 2 default paradigms. Either I win, or you win. If you succeed, it means I lose. There's only so much to go around, and I need to get mine before someone else does. This is called the scarcity mindset. It's rooted in fear, insecurity, and comparison. People with a scarcity mindset tend to feel threatened by other people's success, guard their ideas, compete excessively, or give in entirely, hoping to avoid conflict. But Covey proposes a revolutionary alternative, the abundance mindset. This is the belief that there's enough for everyone. Success is not a limited resource. The best outcomes are not either / or, they're both / and. And from this belief flows the win-win paradigm. Win-win is a frame of mind and heart that constantly seeks mutual benefit in all human interactions. It's not about being nice. It's not about compromise. And it's not about being a pushover. It's about seeking solutions where everyone can win, where agreements honor the interests, needs, and values of all involved. Covey explains that win-win is based on 3 core values. Integrity, sticking to your true values. Maturity, balancing courage with consideration. Abundance mentality, believing there's plenty to go around. Now, win-win is not the only paradigm people use. Let's take a look at alternative paradigms Covey outlines. Win-lose. This is authoritarian, power-driven, and rooted in competition. Think, I'll get what I want, even if you lose. It can work in sports or short-term negotiations, but in relationships or teams, it erodes trust and loyalty. Lose-win. This is the appeaser's mindset. You sacrifice your own needs just to maintain peace. It often breeds resentment and low self-esteem over time. Lose-lose. This happens when people are so obsessed with defeating the other side that they sabotage both. Think, toxic rivalries or mutual destruction scenarios. Win. This one is subtle. It's about getting what you want, without thinking whether others win or lose. It's self-centered but socially acceptable. Now compare those with win-win, which says, let's find a solution where we both walk away better off. This isn't always easy. It requires trust, maturity, creativity, and patience. But in the long term, it builds the strongest relationships, both personally and professionally. Covey outlines 5 interdependent dimensions of the win-win mindset. These are the internal and external structures that support mutually beneficial outcomes. Let's explore each. 1. Character. Everything begins with character. You can't fake a win-win mindset. Covey says that three character traits are foundational. Integrity, you're honest with yourself and others. You don't manipulate, exaggerate, or break promises. Maturity, you balance courage and consideration. You speak your truth, but with empathy. Abundance mentality, you don't view others as threats. You believe everyone can succeed. If you lack any of these, win-win collapses into manipulation, avoidance, or control. 2. Relationships. Trust is the foundation of win-win. And trust comes from consistent character over time. Covey says, trust is the emotional bank account. When you make deposits, like keeping promises, listening, and showing loyalty, you build goodwill. This allows you to have open, honest dialogue without triggering defensiveness. Without trust, even the best solutions will be doubted. 3. Agreements. Win-win doesn't mean everything's casual. In fact, Covey emphasizes the importance of clear, performance-based agreements. These agreements should include desired results, guidelines and boundaries, resources available, accountability measures, and clear consequences or follow-up. In organizations, this empowers people. It creates clarity. It prevents micromanagement. In families, agreements teach responsibility and respect, instead of enforcing obedience through fear. 4. Support systems. This is where win-win either flourishes or fails. Covey points out that many businesses preach teamwork, but reward individual performance. They talk about collaboration, but promote the most competitive employees. If your systems, incentives, structures, culture don't align with win-win thinking, people will revert to self-preservation. So leaders must design systems that reward cooperation, value transparency, encourage shared success. Because systems shape behavior, even more than slogans. 5. Processes. Finally, we need problem-solving processes that support win-win. Covey offers a simple 4-step process for win-win negotiation. See the problem from the other person's point of view. Identify the key concerns involved. Determine what results would constitute a fully acceptable solution for both parties. Brainstorm solutions until you find one that benefits both. This takes time. It requires listening, empathy, and creativity. But the outcome is powerful. Both people walk away feeling respected and committed. Now let's bring this into real life. In business, a client wants a faster turnaround. You want more time for quality. A win-win might be to break the project into 2 phases, delivering a draft early and refining the final later. In family, a teenager wants independence. The parent wants safety. A win-win might be setting curfews with trust-building milestones. In partnerships, one person wants freedom, the other stability. A win-win could involve flexible roles with mutual check-ins. The key is to avoid compromise, where both sides lose a little, and aim for synergy, where both sides win more than they could alone. Of course, there are barriers to the win-win mindset. Some of the most common include ego, wanting to win for pride's sake. Fear, believing that giving others power means you'll lose yours. Lack of trust, thinking others will take advantage. Cultural conditioning, growing up in win-lose environments. Covey says the answer is to start with yourself. Ask, do I really believe in abundance? Am I secure enough to want others to win too? Can I be firm and kind at the same time? Practice in small situations. Build emotional bank accounts. Use empathy. And always look for the third alternative, the one where we both walk away better. Let's quickly recap what we've learned in Habit 4, Think Win-Win. Win-win is a mindset based on mutual benefit, abundance, and long-term trust. It requires character, integrity, maturity, and an abundance mentality. It thrives in relationships built on trust and mutual respect. It is strengthened by clear agreements, aligned systems, and creative problem solving. It's not about compromise or avoiding conflict, it's about co creating value. And it leads to the highest form of success, not just achievement, but interdependence. Win win is not just a strategy, it's a way of life, one that builds lasting relationships, earns deep trust, and creates exponential value. If this chapter helped you rethink how you approach negotiation, relationships, or collaboration, hit that like button and subscribe. We're working through the 7 habits of highly effective people one chapter at a time, in full, voiceover ready format. Coming up next is Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood, a deep dive into the power of empathic listening and how it transforms connection, leadership, and influence. Comment below. Have you been operating from a win-lose or lose-win mindset without realizing it? What's one way you can start practicing win-win in your next conversation or decision? Thanks for watching, and remember, don't play the zero-sum game. Choose collaboration. Choose character. Choose win-win. Welcome back to the channel where we transform life-changing books into powerful, easy-to-follow insights, one habit at a time. Today, we're diving into Habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood, from Stephen R. Covey's classic, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you've ever felt misunderstood, had conversations that went nowhere, or struggled to communicate in relationships, this habit could change everything. Because Habit 5 is the key to connection. It's the foundation of influence, trust, and collaboration. By the end of this video, you'll learn what true empathic listening looks like, why most people don't actually listen, even when they think they do, how to practice this habit in everyday conversations, and how it unlocks deeper relationships at home, at work, and in leadership. Let's get started. Stephen Covey begins this chapter with a bold statement. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Think about your last disagreement. While the other person was speaking, were you really listening, or were you preparing your comeback? That's the problem Covey tackles here. He calls it one of the deepest needs of the human heart, to be heard. Not judged. Not corrected. Not ignored. Just understood. But we live in a world full of noise, where the skill of listening has been replaced by the habit of reacting. That's why Habit 5 is so important. It flips the usual communication pattern. Instead of starting with your message, your argument, or your opinion, it begins with listening deeply, not just to words, but to emotions and meanings. This kind of listening is what Covey calls empathic listening. Let's define that clearly. Empathic listening is not about agreeing with the other person. It's not about saying, "Yeah, I get it," while still thinking about your next point. It's about entering their world, really entering it. It's about seeing things from their perspective, feeling what they feel, and reflecting it back so they know they're not alone. This goes way beyond active listening techniques like, "aha," or "I hear you." It's about understanding the emotional context behind their words. When you listen empathically, something magical happens. People feel safe. Walls come down. And suddenly, they're open to your influence, not because you argued harder, but because you listened better. Covey explains why most people struggle with this. The main reason? We're conditioned to respond too soon. He outlines 4 common ways people listen poorly. Evaluating, we judge and either agree or disagree. Probing, we ask questions from our own frame of reference. Advising, we try to fix things with our own solutions. Interpreting, we try to diagnose or explain their behavior based on our story. Each of these responses shifts attention away from the speaker and toward you. Even if you mean well, the result is the same. The other person doesn't feel heard. And when people don't feel heard, They shut down. They defend. They withdraw. Or they attack. Covey introduces the 5 levels of listening, from worst to best. Ignoring, not listening at all. Pretending, nodding or saying, yeah, without focus. Selective listening, hearing only what interests you. Attentive listening, paying attention to the words. Empathic listening, seeking to understand the feelings and meanings behind the words. The goal of Habit 5 is to reach that top level, empathic listening. It's not about technique. It's about intention. When you truly care about what someone is trying to express, when you give them space to speak without interrupting, advising, or correcting, you're communicating this powerful message. I see you. I hear you. And your experience matters. So how do you practice empathic listening? Covey gives us a framework. Start by listening with your ears, eyes, and heart. Be present. Set aside distractions. Make eye contact. Focus your full attention on the speaker. Let them finish. Don't interrupt. Don't jump in with your solution. Let the person speak until they feel fully heard. Reflect their message. Paraphrase what they said in your own words. For example, so what I hear you saying is that you felt let down after the meeting? Or, it sounds like you're really overwhelmed with the deadline. Acknowledge their feelings. Name the emotion. Say, that sounds frustrating, or I can see how that would be disappointing. This validates their experience without necessarily agreeing. Keep your agenda aside, for now. Your goal isn't to fix, debate, or defend. It's simply to understand. Once the person feels heard, truly heard, only then do you share your perspective. This is the second half of the habit, then be understood. Because once someone feels understood, they're far more likely to listen in return. Let's see how this plays out in real life. Imagine a teenager comes home upset. You ask what's wrong, and they say, I hate school. It's stupid. The instinctive response might be, you're overreacting. School is important. You'll feel better tomorrow. But empathic listening sounds like this. You hate school. It sounds like you're really frustrated. Want to talk about what happened today? This opens the door. It shows you're not trying to control or fix them, just walk beside them. And from there, real dialogue begins. Or picture a team member at work says, I'm thinking about quitting. The reactive response might be, we need you. Let's figure this out. The empathic response, you've been carrying a lot. Want to share what's making you feel that way? That pause, that reflection, that space, it changes everything. Covey shares that this habit transforms not just conversations, but relationships. Trust grows. Conflicts soften. Influence rises. Because once people feel heard, their hearts open, and they listen too. Now let's address some common misunderstandings about Habit 5. First, empathic listening doesn't mean you agree with everything someone says. You can understand without endorsing. Second, it's not about fixing the person or rescuing them from their emotions. It's about witnessing their experience with respect. Third, it doesn't mean giving up your own voice. In fact, once you've truly listened, your voice carries more power and credibility. So Habit 5 isn't passive. It's one of the most active, courageous, and effective skills you can develop, especially as a leader, a parent, or a partner. Here's a simple exercise to try this week. Choose one relationship where communication feels tense or shallow. Then in your next interaction, focus 100% on understanding before speaking. Let them finish. Paraphrase. Validate. And wait until they feel heard. Then, and only then, share your thoughts. Watch how the energy shifts. This is how relationships deepen, not through clever arguments, but through intentional listening. Let's quickly recap Habit 5. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Most people listen to reply, not to understand, and this blocks trust. Empathic listening is about understanding someone's thoughts, feelings, and meanings before sharing your own. There are 5 levels of listening. Only the highest, empathic listening, leads to true connection. The key skills are presence, paraphrasing, emotional validation, and restraint. You don't have to agree, you just have to care enough to understand. This habit builds emotional safety, softens conflict, and elevates influence. Covey reminds us, you have to build the skills of listening before people will invite you to speak into their lives. If this chapter helped you reframe how you communicate with others, give it a like and subscribe. We're walking through the 7 habits of highly effective people one chapter at a time, in full, voiceover-ready depth. Coming up next is Habit 6, Synergize, where we'll discover how collaboration, not compromise, leads to outcomes greater than anyone could create alone. Drop a comment below. Have you ever had a moment where just listening changed the whole conversation? What's one relationship where you'll practice empathic listening this week? Thanks for watching, and remember, influence doesn't begin with speaking. It begins with listening, deeply, intentionally, and with heart. Welcome back to the channel where we explore the most powerful personal development books ever written, chapter by chapter, habit by habit, and today we're diving into Habit 6, Synergize from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. If you've ever wondered how to turn disagreement into creative solutions, or how to make collaboration more powerful than compromise, this habit is for you. Habit 6 is the crown jewel of interdependence. It's where all the previous habits come together, and where the magic of creativity, teamwork, and transformation really begins. By the end of this video, you'll understand what true synergy is, why it's more powerful than just getting along or compromising, the key mindsets that unlock it, and how to turn differences into strengths in your business, family, or community. Let's get into it. Stephen Covey defines synergy as the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That means when 2 or more people work together with trust and openness, they don't just add value, they multiply it. True synergy creates outcomes that neither side could have imagined on their own. It's not just 1 + 1 = 2, it's 1 + 1 = 3, or 30, or 300. Synergy is the highest level of cooperation. It's what happens when people bring different perspectives, but instead of clashing, they combine those differences to create something better than either could alone. But here's what synergy is not. It's not compromise. It's not fake harmony. And it's not simply agreeing to disagree. Covey says synergy requires trust, open-mindedness, and the belief that differences are valuable. That last point is key. Because let's face it, most of us are uncomfortable with differences. We think, why can't they just see it my way? Why are they being so difficult? They don't understand how it's supposed to be. But Habit 6 asks us to flip that mindset. Instead of fearing differences, value them. Instead of trying to convince others, seek to understand. Instead of settling for compromise, search for the third alternative, a solution better than what either party first proposed. Covey compares synergy with compromise to make the distinction clear. In compromise, you give up something. I give up something. We meet in the middle. But neither of us is fully satisfied. In synergy, we both keep what matters most to us. We stay in dialogue long enough to find a creative path. We leave with more than we came in with. Compromise is often the default in conflict resolution. But synergy is what happens when we apply the previous 5 habits together, especially. Think win-win. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. Only when we've built those foundations can synergy happen. So what creates synergy? Covey outlines a few principles and mindsets that make synergy possible. Valuing differences. This is the heart of it. Synergy requires that we see differences in opinions, backgrounds, strengths, not as threats, but as opportunities. When someone sees the world differently, don't resist them, learn from them. Ask, what can I not see that they do? Openness. Synergy thrives in environments where people feel safe to speak, challenge, question, and brainstorm without fear of being shut down. It requires a mindset of curiosity, not certainty. Trust and respect. You can't synergize with someone you don't respect. Mutual trust creates the space where people can drop their defensiveness and explore ideas without ego. Creative tension. Covey says that synergy is born in the space between perspectives, when both parties hold their view and remain open to something new. Creative tension isn't conflict. It's the friction that polishes ideas, if handled respectfully. Let's explore some real-life examples. In business, imagine two teams with very different approaches. One is risk-oriented and fast-moving. The other is analytical and process-driven. In most companies, these teams would clash. But if they apply synergy, if they listen, respect, and integrate both perspectives, they might create a product that is innovative and scalable, not just fast, not just safe, but better than either side imagined. In families, think of a couple raising kids. One parent is playful and spontaneous. The other is structured and detail-focused. Rather than arguing over whose way is right, they can create a parenting approach that combines joy and structure, fun and responsibility. That's synergy. In communities, picture people from different cultures collaborating on a local project. Their traditions, values, and styles may seem incompatible at first. But through dialogue and shared purpose, they find a third way, a new tradition, a shared celebration that reflects the richness of both. These are not theoretical. This is the power of Habit 6 in action. But let's be honest, synergy doesn't always come naturally. So what gets in the way? Covey outlines a few barriers to synergy. Ego, the need to be right, blocks listening. Fear, worrying about losing control or being vulnerable. Prejudice, holding unconscious biases that dismiss other perspectives. Low trust, without trust, people withhold ideas or protect themselves. Communication breakdowns, poor listening and misinterpretation escalate differences instead of resolving them. These are real challenges. And they don't go away by accident. To build synergy, we must be intentional. Here's how. Strategies to foster synergy. Create a safe space. Whether in a team meeting or a personal relationship, make sure people feel heard, not judged. That opens the door to creativity. Celebrate differences. Instead of saying, we disagree, say, that's interesting, help me understand your thinking. Use sentence starters like, tell me more about that. What would that look like if we combined it with X? How can we get the best of both? Seek the third alternative. This is Covey's golden nugget. When two people have opposing views, most try to win the argument or meet in the middle. But synergy asks, what's a third path, one we haven't thought of yet, that could satisfy both of us? This requires time, creativity, and patience. But the results are exponentially better. Led by listening. If you want others to open up, model empathy. Use Habit 5. When people feel heard, they drop their guard. That's when synergy begins. Covey says synergy is nature's principle. In ecosystems, different organisms support one another. In music, harmony arises from different notes played together. In society, progress is made when people with different talents unite. So synergy isn't optional, it's the highest form of collaboration. And it starts with you. Ask yourself, Do I surround myself with people who think differently, and do I value them? Do I listen with an open heart, or do I try to convince and control? Am I seeking compromise or co-creation? You don't need to wait for the perfect team, the perfect family, or the perfect situation. You can start practicing synergy right where you are, with one conversation, one brainstorm, one brave step. Let's quickly recap Habit 6, Synergize. Synergy is creative cooperation, where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's not about compromising. It's about creating a third alternative. Synergy requires valuing differences, building trust, and embracing creative tension. Real-life synergy transforms families, teams, communities, and yourself. Barriers like ego, fear, and poor communication can block synergy, but empathy, curiosity, and openness can unlock it. Synergy isn't about blending in, it's about blending up, creating something better and bigger than you imagined. Covey reminds us, synergy is the essence of principle-centered leadership. It catalyzes, unifies, and unleashes the greatest powers within people. If this chapter helped you see the value of differences or rethink how you approach collaboration, hit that like button and subscribe. We're walking through the 7 habits of highly effective people, one fully developed habit at a time. Coming up next is the final habit, Habit 7, Sharpen the Saw, where we'll learn how to renew ourselves consistently to maintain long-term effectiveness in all areas of life. Before you go, drop a comment. Have you ever experienced synergy in a team, a friendship, or a family decision? What's one area in your life where you want to stop compromising and start synergizing? Thanks for tuning in, and remember, don't just settle. Don't just agree. Create. Collaborate. Synergize. Welcome back to the channel where we turn timeless self-mastery books into deep, practical knowledge, one habit at a time. Today, we've reached the final habit in Stephen R. Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Habit 7, Sharpen the Saw. If you've ever struggled with burnout, loss of motivation, or feeling stuck despite trying your best, this habit is your foundation. It's the habit that sustains all the others. The habit of renewal. By the end of this video, you'll understand why effectiveness is impossible without self-renewal. The 4 dimensions you must invest in to stay sharp. How to create a lifestyle of balance, energy, and long-term growth. And how this habit ties together the entire 7 habits framework. Let's begin. Covey opens this chapter with a metaphor you'll never forget. Suppose you came upon someone in the woods working feverishly to saw down a tree. You ask, "What are you doing?" He replies, "Can't you see? I'm sawing down this tree." You say, "You look exhausted. Why don't you take a break and sharpen your saw?" He responds, "I don't have time to sharpen the saw. I'm too busy sawing." This is the trap so many of us fall into. We're too busy working, striving, pushing, to realize we're getting dull. We're too focused on output to think about input. Too busy achieving to invest in renewing ourselves. That's why Habit 7 is called Sharpen the Saw. It's about preserving and enhancing your greatest asset, you. Because without self-care, reflection, and renewal, even the most productive, disciplined person will eventually plateau or burn out. So what exactly does sharpening the saw mean? Covey breaks it down into 4 dimensions of renewal. Physical, body. Mental, mind. Emotional/social, heart. Spiritual, soul. Let's go through each in detail, with practical ways to renew each area. 1. Physical renewal, caring for the body. The physical dimension is about how you treat your body, your vehicle for action. This includes nutrition, sleep, exercise, rest, stress management. Covey emphasizes that physical well-being is not about vanity or quick hacks. It's about sustaining energy, endurance, and capability. He says, we can't ignore the physical dimension. It's impossible to be highly effective while neglecting our body. So what does sharpening the saw look like here? Consistent aerobic exercise to strengthen the heart and lungs. Strength training for vitality. Nutritious meals that fuel rather than fatigue. Adequate sleep that restores brain and muscle function. Deep rest and breathing to reset your nervous system. These are the foundations of performance. And they connect directly to habit 3, put first things first, because caring for your body is important but rarely urgent. Those who succeed long-term build physical renewal into their schedule. 2. Mental renewal, sharpening the mind. This dimension is about continuing to learn, think, plan, and imagine. Mental dullness comes from passive media consumption, never reading or studying, constant busyness without reflection, no strategy, no planning, no vision. But highly effective people train their minds like athletes train their bodies. Mental renewal includes reading great books, like this one, learning new skills, planning your week or reflecting on your progress, journaling, visualization, engaging in challenging conversations. Covey suggests making reading a daily ritual. Not just scrolling social media or binging entertainment, but deliberate growth through wisdom and perspective. And it's not just about input, it's about using your mind creatively. Problem solving, innovation, design, strategy, all sharpen the mind. This ties back to habit 2, begin with the end in mind. If you don't keep your mind sharp, you lose sight of the bigger picture. You start reacting instead of leading. 3. Emotional/social renewal, strengthening the heart. This dimension is about your relationships, emotional intelligence, and social resilience. Covey explains that our effectiveness depends deeply on the quality of our relationships. And the key to emotional renewal is connection. That includes deep, trusting relationships, honest conversations, acts of kindness and service, empathy and listening, spending time with loved ones, without distraction. Remember habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood? That's emotional renewal in action. Covey also talks about the power of what he calls the emotional bank account. Every time you show respect, listen, apologize, or support someone, you make a deposit. Every time you betray trust, ignore, or criticize unfairly, you make a withdrawal. Emotional renewal is about keeping your key relationships strong and healthy. Because nothing drains your energy and focus faster than unresolved emotional tension. Want to renew emotionally? Practice active listening, forgiveness, boundaries, gratitude, quality time with the people who matter. 4. Spiritual renewal, nourishing the soul. This is the deepest dimension, and often the most neglected. It's not about religion, though it can include it. Spiritual renewal is about meaning, purpose, and identity. It's what connects you to why you do what you do. It keeps you grounded when life gets chaotic. It gives you peace, even in pressure. Covey suggests spiritual practices like reflection, prayer, meditation, time in nature, service and contribution, studying sacred or philosophical texts, journaling about your mission, values, and impact. This is the domain of habit 1, be proactive, and habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Spiritual renewal keeps your inner compass sharp, so you don't lose yourself in the pursuit of success. Putting it all together, balance, rhythm, and synergy. Now here's the key. These 4 areas, body, mind, heart, and soul, are interconnected. Neglect one, and the others suffer. Strengthen one, and the others benefit. For example, when your body is weak, your mind becomes foggy. When your relationships are in conflict, your spiritual energy drops. When your soul is starved, your motivation vanishes. That's why habit 7 is about balance and rhythm. Covey isn't telling us to be perfect. He's telling us to renew regularly. Not once a year during burnout, but daily, weekly, consistently. Think of it like sharpening a real saw. If you wait until the blade is completely dull, it takes hours to fix. But if you sharpen regularly, it stays sharp, with little effort. The same applies to your life. Challenges to sharpening the saw. Of course, we all face barriers to this habit. Covey names a few. Busyness, I don't have time to exercise, read, or reflect. Guilt, if I take time for myself, I'm being selfish. Imbalance, I'll just focus on work and rest later. Neglect, it doesn't matter. I'll push through. But here's the truth. If you don't take time to sharpen the saw, eventually, you won't be able to saw at all. Self-renewal is not selfish, it's strategic. It makes you a better parent, leader, thinker, friend, and contributor. So if you've been running on fumes, this is your wake-up call. You don't need a vacation. You need a rhythm. A weekly, even daily rhythm of investment in your core. Let's wrap up with a clear recap of habit 7, sharpen the saw. Effectiveness is not just about action, it's about renewal. Covey outlines 4 dimensions of self-renewal. Physical, exercise, sleep, nutrition, rest. Mental, learning, planning, reading, creating. Emotional/social, connection, trust, empathy, love. Spiritual, purpose, reflection, values, meaning. All areas are interconnected, and synergy between them strengthens your life. Neglect leads to burnout. Renewal leads to resilience. Habit 7 is what sustains all other habits, because a dull saw can't build anything. Covey says, sharpening the saw is the single most powerful investment we can make in life, an investment in ourselves. If this chapter helped you reconnect with your purpose or gave you a nudge to take better care of yourself, hit that like button and subscribe. We've now completed the full 7 habits of highly effective people, all 7 chapters, each delivered in fully expanded voiceover-ready narration. Let us know in the comments. Which habit resonated with you the most? And which area, body, mind, heart, or soul, do you need to sharpen next? Thanks for joining us on this journey through one of the greatest self-mastery frameworks ever created. And remember, you can't give from an empty cup. You can't create with a dull saw. Renew yourself, and everything else will rise. Want a recap of all 7 habits in one video? Let me know below. Until then, stay sharp, stay centered, and keep growing. Welcome back to the channel, and congratulations. If you've been following along with this series, you've made it to the final chapter of one of the most life-changing books ever written, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. Today we're diving into Chapter 8, a powerful conclusion that brings the entire framework together. This chapter isn't about a new habit. It's about internalizing what we've learned, and turning it into a way of life. By the end of this video, you'll understand how the 7 habits interconnect as a unified system. What inside-out living really means in practice. Why personal growth is never finished. And how to sustain the habits for lifelong effectiveness and fulfillment. Let's get started. Covey begins Chapter 8 by circling back to his foundational idea. True change always begins from the inside out. That's how this entire book started, with a call to shift from external techniques to internal transformation. He reminds us that real effectiveness is not about quick wins, image management, or personality polish. It's about character. It's about becoming a person who lives with purpose, integrity, and principle, no matter the role or situation. Now that we've explored all 7 habits, this chapter is a reflection, an invitation to go deeper. Because the 7 habits are not a checklist. They're not something you graduate from. They are a lifestyle, a way of thinking, acting, leading, and relating that gets stronger the more you live it. Let's briefly revisit how they all connect. Habits 1 to 3 are the private victory. They help you move from dependence to independence. You take control of your choices, define your purpose, and act on what matters most. Habits 4 to 6 are the public victory. They empower you to build trust, collaborate deeply, and create outcomes greater than yourself. Habit 7 is the renewal habit. It's how you keep growing, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Together, they form a synergistic system. Each habit reinforces the others. For example, you can't think win-win, habit 4, if you haven't developed independence through habits 1 to 3. You can't sharpen the saw, habit 7, effectively unless you're clear on your mission, habit 2. Covey emphasizes, the 7 habits don't operate in isolation. They're deeply interconnected. When lived in harmony, they create a foundation for a life of effectiveness and fulfillment. So how do we turn this framework into a way of life? Covey offers a few powerful reflections and suggestions. 1. Revisit the inside-out paradigm. This book began with the concept of paradigms, the lens through which you see the world. Covey argued that most people seek change outside themselves, new strategies, better tools, different jobs, or relationships. But the most powerful change comes within, when we examine our own assumptions, values, and identity. Inside-out living means you take responsibility for your life. You focus on character before image. You lead yourself before you try to lead others. You seek to understand before being understood. You create synergy rather than control. When you live from the inside out, you don't just react to life, you shape it. 2. Strengthen your personal mission. Covey revisits the importance of having a mission statement, a written expression of your values, vision, and purpose. He encourages you to review it regularly. Update it. Reflect on it. Let it guide your weekly planning, habit 3. Key decisions, habits 1 and 2. Relationships and goals, habits 4 to 6. Renewal practices, habit 7. Your mission is not static. As you grow, it evolves. But it should always reflect your deepest why. 3. Turn habits into systems. The most effective people don't rely on willpower alone. They create systems that reinforce their values. Covey recommends weekly planning sessions to align your schedule with your roles and goals. Journaling to track your growth and renew your mind. Reviewing your mission at the start of each week. Family meetings to build shared values and goals. Daily reflection to stay grounded and intentional. These small, consistent actions create a rhythm that keeps the habits alive. Without a system, even the best intentions fade. 4. Embrace lifelong learning. One of Covey's final messages is that growth never stops. He warns us not to become complacent. The moment you think, I've mastered this, you've already started drifting. Sharpening the saw is not a one-time event. It's a lifetime commitment. Covey says, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. This shift, from achievement to growth, is what separates successful people from truly effective people. Success is about goals. Effectiveness is about alignment between who you are and what you do. 5. Real-life reflections. In the final part of the chapter, Covey shares stories of people who wrote in, telling how the 7 habits transformed their lives. One reader used the habits to rebuild trust in their marriage. Another used them to lead a struggling team back to performance. A teacher used them to help students develop character, not just grades. A parent used them to reconnect with a distant teenager. These stories reinforce the idea that the 7 habits aren't just ideas, they're tools that work. Not because they're trendy, but because they're based on timeless principles. 6. Living the habits, not memorizing them. Covey closes the book with a powerful call. Don't try to be perfect. Try to be real. You don't need to master every habit today. You need to live them, one moment at a time. When you choose to pause and reflect instead of react, you're living habit 1. When you schedule time for what matters, you're practicing habit 3. When you seek to understand before pushing your view, you're in habit 5. When you apologize, forgive, or reconnect, that's habit 4, 5, or 6 in action. When you read, walk, pray, or plan, you're sharpening the saw. It's in the small, daily choices that the 7 habits come alive. So don't just know the habits. Be them. Let's close this chapter, and this book, with a clear recap. Chapter 8, sometimes titled Inside Out Again, is not about a new habit. It's about consolidating and living the 7 habits with depth and sustainability. Key messages. True change is inside out, based on principles and character, not quick fixes. All 7 habits form an integrated, synergistic system for effectiveness. Regular renewal, habit 7, is essential to long-term growth. Your personal mission statement should guide your roles, goals, and planning. Habits should be embedded into daily and weekly systems. Lifelong learning and humility keep the habits alive. Don't chase perfection. Live with intention, reflection, and alignment. The 7 habits are not about doing more, they're about being better. Not to impress others, but to become the best version of yourself, for your family, your work, your community, and your own soul. If this video, or this series, has helped you reconnect with your deeper purpose, improve your discipline, or build better relationships, then take a moment to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. Let me know. Which habit had the biggest impact on you? And what's one daily action you'll start using to keep these habits alive? This wraps up our full breakdown of the 7 habits of highly effective people, chapter by chapter, fully expanded for your personal and professional transformation. If you'd like a single summary video of all 7 habits, or want us to cover Covey's follow-up book, The 8th Habit, let me know in the comments. And remember, you are not a product of your circumstances. You are a product of your decisions. Live the habits. Sharpen the saw. Lead from the inside out. And as always, keep growing.